Aloha guys, Dr. Tom is coming back at you with the third video for the skeleton, and hopefully we can finish it up. Okay, the axial and the appendicular skeleton. What's the axial? If you know it, then you just know everything else is appendicular. The skull, the spinal column, rib cage, hyoid bone, sternum, spinal column, already said that, sacrum, and coccyx, and the little otoliths in the ear. So what's the appendicular? It's everything else. The shoulder girdle, which is the scapula, which are the shoulder blades, and the clavicles, which are the collarbones. The bones of the upper limbs, and in the low back or the legs, we have the pelvic girdle and the bones of the legs, and that makes up the appendicular skeleton. Pectoral girdle. The pecs, of course, are up here. Shoulder girdle and upper limbs. Again, the pectoral girdle is the clavicles, collarbones, the two shoulder blades. Then, in the upper arm, the arm bone is the humerus. The forearm bone has two bones. The radius is on the thumb side. The ulna is on the little finger side. The radius is on the thumb side. The ulna is on the little finger side. We have 8 bones in the wrists called carpal bones. Each one has an individual name. You don't have to learn them. The long bones that run through the palm of our hands are called metacarpals. And then the bones that make up our fingers, and thumb is a finger, by the way, it's the first finger, are called phalanges. Okay, thankfully they got a picture here. Okay, here's the scapula, shoulder blade on the back, up against the back. The collarbones are called clavicles. They attach here to the sternum, and they go out here and prop up, attach at the acromion process, which is part of the shoulder blade that projects and comes over. So, scapula, clavicle, acromion process coming from the scapula, going across. Here is the humerus bone, the shoulder joint. Here is the radius, thumb side, the ulna on the little finger side. Here are the 8 carpal bones, the 5 metacarpals, and we have 14 phalanges. Now, how many fingers we got? We got 5 because a thumb is a finger. Why don't we have 15 phalanges instead of 14? Because for whatever reason, the thumb only has 2 and all the rest of them have 3. Now, guys, I know this is sounding real complicated. But here's the good news. Once we get to the legs, which are coming up in a moment, it's very similar to the way the arms are. So, like there's the same number of toes as there are fingers, and they're called phalanges also, for example. Okay. Now, I guess just to save space, they put this, which should have been in the previous one, because we're getting ready to talk about the hips and stuff. Okay, the palms up is called supination. When we rotate, where's the camera? When we rotate down, it's called pronation. Supination, pronation. Now notice that these bones cross each other. When we pronate our palm down, the radius bone crosses over the ulna. The ulna's fixed, and the radius curves around it. Supination, pronation. Do you need to know that? Yes. Okay, the pelvic girdle is actually 3 bones fused into a single one. Functions weight bearing. It bears the weight of the upper body and the head and all. Attachment for lower limbs, protection of organs. The 3 bones that make up the coxal bones, or the hip bones, are the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. Let's see if we got a picture. Here they are. Okay. Collectively, guys, this is called the coxal bone. Here's the other coxal bone. Here is the sacrum. The spine would sit right here. But in fact, these things are made from 3 separate bones that are fused. Ilium, ischium, and the pubis bone. And in the adult, they're fused, and so they function as 2 bones. And they move when there are 2 big joints here called the sacroiliac joints. They're usually called SI joints for short. There's a lot of movement there. There's a cartilaginous joint here called the symphysis pubis, and For example, during childbirth and all this, in the female, this opens up more. It doesn't tear, but it like stretches. So these are big, stout, strong bones, and they're made to support the weight. And in fact, they do. The weight of the entire upper body, arms, and head. Okay, if you wondered on crime shows and stuff how they can tell whether it's a female skeleton they find or a male, it's if they have the pelvis, it's easy to do. Why? Well, the female pelvis is wider. This pelvic inlet is wider. And look at the angle here of the pelvic outlet. In the male, it's a shorter angle, and the female, it's a broader angle. I'm assuming all likely for childbirthing purposes. Okay, the lower limbs. Now again, like Dr. Tom said, it's very similar to the arms. So you learn one, you kind of almost learn the other. Okay, here's the hip bone. The thigh bone is called the femur. Here it is. The thigh bone is called the femur. So in the upper leg, like the upper arm, we have a single bone. In the lower leg, like the forearm, we have two bones. The big stout shin bone is called the tibia. The little smaller bone out laterally on the side is called the fibula. Here's the word. So what do we have? Well, we got three bones that makes up the whole leg. The femur, thigh bone, the tibia, shin bone, and the fibula. There's also a kneecap here. The kneecap is called the patella. Here's the word. This greater trochanter, guys, there's one on each leg. A lot of people, you can feel that on the side here. A lot of people think that's the hip, and it's not. It's the greater trochanter of the femur. The hip is deep to that. See, the femur goes up and makes a curve. There's a lot of muscular attachment here, and if you get a little strain in there or something, you about can't stand up. I've had trouble there myself in the past from injuries and stuff. Okay, let's see. We have condyles here. Here's the knee joint, and then there are 7 tarsal bones. Now remember, there are 8 carpal bones in the wrist. There are 7 tarsal bones in the ankle. Then we have metatarsals in the toes, just like metacarpals in the hand. And finally, we have 14 phalanges that make up the toes, just like we have 14 phalanges that make up the fingers. Now, we've basically covered a whole skeleton now, guys. Foot bones. Tarsals. Tarsals, again, are the bones in the ankle. There are 7 of them. Metatarsals are the long bones in the foot that stretch from the ankle out to the phalanges. And then the phalanges are the toes. There are 14 phalanges in the toes, just like there are 14 phalanges in the fingers. The arches. We have arches in the feet, or we're supposed to have. We have arches that go this way, and we have arches that go the other way. Here are the tarsals. Here are the metatarsals. Here are the phalanges. For example, the heel bone is called the calcaneus. All the tarsals have separate names. The bone that articulates and makes the ankle joint is called the talus. It's one of the tarsal bones. This is showing a common medical condition when this joint starts growing out. It's called a bunion, usually due to poorly fitting shoes. Most foot problems, guys, a great number of them are due to poorly fitting shoes and stuff. Sometimes it has to be surgically repaired. I imagine it would be really painful. You'd be hobbling around there for quite a while, I would think. Okay, we should have arches in our feet. If you don't, it's called flat feet or falling arches. You want to know if you got a good arch? Get your feet wet and step on concrete and look and see if you got a nice, if it makes that nice footprint where it comes in, it's good. If it's just like a blob, you have fallen arches. Okay, now we've covered a whole skeleton. Also, too, there are 3 tiny little bones in the middle ear called the otoliths. The incus, the stapes, and the, what's the other one? I can't think at the moment. Hammer, anvil, and stir, but that's the common names, the real names. Malleus, incus, and stapes. See, you thought I wasn't going to get it. Okay, types of joints in the body. There's a lot of immovable joints, like in the skull or in the coxal bones. Slightly movable joints, and then freely movable. Sorry, I had to cut that damn phone off. Okay. Freely movable joints are the most interesting and probably the most clinically significant. So, for example, the knees are freely moving joints, the elbows, the fingers, the neck, a bunch of stuff, ankles, the shoulders. Okay, so they have articular cartilage at the end of each of the epiphysis areas. There, like in the knee, there's a joint capsule around it, guys, like a waterproof membrane that seals it off. And then there, inside of that, there's a synovial membrane. This is an important word to know. Freely moving joints, the synovial membrane produces a fluid called synovial fluid, and it lubricates and nourishes that. We don't have blood vessels going in there. The synovial fluid receives nutrients and oxygen and so forth, and it diffuses in there. So the most important thing, this is what they taught me in school, because I'm the type of doctor that specializes in a lot of this kind of thing. These joints, guys, have to move properly, and if they don't, they deteriorate over time and become arthritic, with the most common arthritis, which is osteoarthritis. And so these joints have to move properly. And if they don't have full motion in them, they deteriorate over time. Let's see, cartilage. There's a lot of cartilage around here. Bursae and ligaments. Now remember, we said ligaments connect bone to bone. But we also have little fluid-filled bags that act as a bearing or to help cut friction down. And they're called bursae. Let's see if they have any pictures of them here. I don't see them. There's several bursae in the knee. I guess I ain't going to show it. Okay, naming joints. They're basically, guys, named with the two bones they connect, or well, like temporomandibular joint up here, TMJ it's called. It's the temporal bone and the mandible. That's the temporomandibular. Sternoclavicular joint is the clavicles and the breastbone here, the sternum. So that's basically the way they're named. I don't necessarily expect, you might have to know them for tests, so to know the names of this stuff. Glenohumeral is the shoulder joint, the glenoid process of the scapula and the humerus bone. Also, too, one more, acromioclavicular joint, where the clavicles come out here, guys, and attach to the acromion process. If you have separated shoulder, it's a tear here in those things, and that's common among athletes and stuff. Types of synovial joint. We have a hinge joint like our elbows and knees, ball and socket like the shoulder, pivot like the axis and atlas, saddle, we don't have an example, gliding wrist, condyloid knuckles. Big synovial joint, tibiofemoral, the knee joint, in other words, gives a lot of trouble. Glenohumeral, the shoulder, has the most range of motion of any joint in the body, and it's the most delicate. Humeral, elbow, coxal hip joints. Types of joint movement, flexion, extension. This is flexion, this is extension. Dorsiflexion, hyperextension, yeah, I don't know if we want to go in. Abduction is away from the midline. Look, the B is away from the A. Adduction is toward the midline. The D is facing towards the A. That's the best way in the world. That's the way I learned it, to remember. If the feet are pointed inwards, that's inversion. If they're rotated outwards, that's eversion. Supination, pronation, circumduction is trying to get this done, guys. Here they all are. Well, we did it. All right, I'm so proud. Let's see now. This abduction and adduction is commonly used in medicine, guys, and it's real important. And it sounds almost the same. So how do you remember it? Where's it at? And now that we need it, I don't see it. I wanted the big lettering. If it's away from the midline, like right now I'm abducting my arm. Abduction. The B faces away from the A in the word. Bringing it back is adduction. With a D, the D faces the A. Now guys, this is exactly the way all medical students and people memorize this stuff, and it's the way I highly recommend you memorize it. Dorsiflexion is pulling the foot up. Plantar flexion is pointing it down. Remember, the plantar surface is the sole of the foot. Supination, pronation, inversion. There's a lot of flexion and extension. The neck, the low back, and all here shows the knee joint, but also the hip and all. Okay, we're out of time. We're finished. That's good. See you next time. Be there, be square. Dr. Tom signing off.